This one is for goalies who want to decrease their hip pain and stiffness, or for those of you who just don't want to develop hip pain and stiffness whatsoever. Here we go. Welcome back to Goalie Training Pro TV. I am Maria Mountain. I am an exercise physiologist and I specialize in off-ice training for hockey goalies, which means I help you win more games with fewer injuries. And today we are starting with the lacrosse ball. Or should I say we're going to start with the dreaded lacrosse ball. So this is a hip maintenance program. You can do it daily. We're going to do a little bit of soft tissue work, a little bit of work on the stabilizers of the hip. But we're going to start off with soft tissue, lacrosse ball on the TFL or portion of the TFL. How do we find the TFL? The TFL is the muscular portion at the top of your iliotibial band. So you start by putting your hand on the outside of your hip, just like that. And then you're going to roll your leg in and out. And you'll feel kind of like a golf ball come in and out of prominence. So like a bony golf ball in and out of prominence. Okay, I found it, so I put my finger on that. And I'm going to come up about an inch and in about an inch. So I'm going to come this way about an inch and this way about an inch. And I'm going to put the lacrosse ball there. And then I'm just going to lie on it. I'm not going to really roll around on it a whole bunch. I'm just going to put pressure there. I always tell you guys this, you'll know when you found it because you'll get the positive jaw drop sign. You'll go like, oh, I found it. So really easy to tell when you found it, especially if it's an area you haven't worked on before. Drop a comment if you now understand what the positive jaw drop sign is. But we're just gonna hang out there for about 30 seconds on each side. Sometimes this muscle, this TFL, because it's so broad, it can do so much. It gets overused because your other muscles, and we're going to get to them later, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So this one, that really is supposed to sort of tension the iliotibial band, maybe help out with some movements. It starts doing movements, and that can create a lot of problems with your hips, also with your knees. So 30 seconds on each side there. Then we're going to go to the hip flexors, and we're not going to get too picky about it. We're just going to get into the big sort of bundle in the front of your hip. So if you put your thumb across the front of your hip and lift your leg, you're going to feel it. It feels like a cable of muscle there. So that's where we're going to put the lacrosse ball. And then we're going to just work along the length of that, really just up towards its origin up there. So don't get on the bony part of your pelvis, but just below that and in the front of your hip. And we'll get the portion that's towards the inside, towards your groin. We'll work our way out to the portion that's closer to your hip. And if you find a really tender spot there, just hang out on that spot until it sort of releases, lets go, melts away. And then hunt around to find another spot. But think of it like a massage, not like an aerobic exercise. We're not going to be vigorous with it. We just want to, work on that tissue quality, find some of those tender points. That'll be 30 seconds on each side as well. I'm trying to keep this nice and quick for you so you can do it every day. The next one we're going to get is our glutes, but not the part of our glutes that we sit on all the time. And you can get that area too. I'm not saying it's not important, but I think the area we miss is the upper glutes. So I'm gonna get back on my elbow, get this upper portion of my glutes right at the top of my pelvis. And I can roll sort of this way, kind of from my bum crack outward, trying to follow those fibers. And it's not wrong if you roll this way as well. Same thing with your hip flexor. If you find like a tender spot or a little knot, just hang out on that. Let it melt away and then find the next spot. But make sure you're getting, from the inside, kind of closer to your bum crack, out towards your hip. So don't just stay in the middle part. Get all those areas. And you'll find some areas are more tender than others. That will also be, you guessed it, 30 seconds on each side. Now we're going to work a little bit of hip mobility. We're going to work a little bit of hip internal rotation, and we're going to work on activating those muscles in their shortened position. So really simply, we're going to lie on our tummy. We're going to bend our knees to 90 degrees. And we're going to try to have our knees touching, our knees together. Then we're going to just pull our knees apart. And we're going to pull for about 3 seconds. So 1, 2, 3. And then I'll relax. I'll pull apart again. Pull 1, 2, 3. And I'm pulling my feet apart with pretty good pressure. But I'm not going to generate strain or pain, anything like that. If you're doing it and you feel pain, reduce the amount of pressure, reduce the amount of effort you're using. If you still have pain, even when you're not using much effort, that's a sign of dysfunction. So leave this exercise out, and I'll tell you what to do when you're having some of those signs of dysfunction a little bit later. If this position, so lying right down, don't do it up here on your elbows, because I don't want you in hyperextension, your low back. But even if this position sort of feels like you're hyperextending, which it could, especially if you're tight in your hip flexors, just put a little cushion or something under your hips here, and that'll make you feel a little bit more comfortable. But it's going to be 10 repetitions, 3-second push, pretty good effort, but not so that you're straining or not so that you're having pain. So that's working those hip internal rotators, even when they're in a shortened position. That's the kind of thing that helps you develop the muscles you need, like when you're sliding across in a half butterfly and your pad keeps wanting to fold in behind you. It's because you don't have strength in that shortened position. We talk about strength at length all the time, but strength in a shortened position is important too. So this gives you a little head start on that. Then from there, we're gonna go into a stretch to kind of open up the hip a little bit. It's called the figure 4 stretch, and it looks really cool, let me tell you. So this is a good one to do at the beach. So you're gonna lie on your side, and I brought my foot kind of on the outside of this leg, and it's above my knee. And so from this position, I'm just going to rotate over and then lie flat down. And this one doesn't feel like a stretch. Like, when you stretch your quads or your hamstrings, it's like, oh, I feel a stretch. This one's just going to feel a little bit tight in the front of your hip. Some people say, well, I'm not feeling a stretch. I need to do more. Well, if you were so flexible in this area that you didn't need to stretch it, that means your hip bone, your ASIS, would be sitting on the turf. So, you can see I'm about this far away. Now, if you are super flexible in your hips and you do this and this ASIS is on the floor, then yeah, you probably don't need to do this one. You already have a lot of mobility there or flexibility there. Most of us don't. So we're just going to chill in this position, go to our happy place, and we'll hold that for 60 seconds, and then we'll switch sides. We've got 2 more exercises to go, but before we get to that, I want to ask you if you have a hip mobility program. Almost every high-level baseball pitcher has a shoulder maintenance program. Sometimes it's not very good, but they have one and they do it quite religiously because they appreciate how important their shoulder and elbow health is to the success of their career. But in my experience, I find that goalies don't have that. They I kind of do some stretches, but they don't really have that daily hip maintenance program. In the goalies that I work with, I work it into their daily mobility program, so it isn't kind of 2 separate things. But I'm interested to know if you have a hip maintenance program that addresses flexibility, mobility, soft tissue, and strength and stamina of the stabilizers. And really the emphasis is on the stamina part. And if you don't, that's why I made this video. I made it exactly for you. So drop a comment below to let me know, hey, I'm gonna promise to try this for 5 days in a row so that you can feel the difference yourself. And once you've done it, come back, drop a comment, let me know how it went for you. I think you'll feel results even after just a couple days. Your hips are going to feel a little bit better out on the ice. Let's get back to it and let's finish those last 2 exercises. So the next one's going to be an adductor squeeze. There are lots of ways we can do an adductor squeeze, but I'm going to keep it super simple. We're just going to do it a manual. So we're going to cross our hands, and so my right hand goes to my left knee, my left hand goes to my right knee, and then I'm going to squeeze into my hands. So I'm going to resist with my hands, kind of pushing out on my knees. I'm going to push in on my hands with my knees, keeping my shins parallel. So I'm not going to go into internal rotation or external rotation. Sometimes we do that, we have a purpose, a reason we want to do that. We're not going to do that today. We're just going to go nice straight. Now, you can change this a little bit because, you know, we talk about strength at different lengths. So I can do some that are narrow in, and then I can gradually work my way out to a wider push. So for this one, we're going to do a 5-second push. You're going to do 6 repetitions and 2 sets. The next 2 exercises are 2 sets. You don't have to have your knees pulled way up. You know, I'd like them to be almost about 90 degrees, not quite, but you don't have to purposely pull your knees up. It's really just that adductor squeeze that we're working on for this exercise. From there, we're going to go to our hands and knees position, and we're going to do a quadruped fire hydrant. And you'll see why it's called that in a second. But we're going to work on our lateral hip rotators. So again, we kind of talk about some of the rotator cuff muscles of your hip. This is what we're working on. So I'm going to bring my heel to my bum. I'm going to extend my hip a little bit, and then I'm going to abduct. So I'm going to extend a bit and then come out to the side, and I'm just going to hold that position for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'll come back down. Extend, abduct, and as I abduct, I externally rotate a little bit, and I'll hold 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you're going to do 6 on each side, but again, it's going to be 2 sets. So the adductor squeeze and the fire hydrant, they'll make a superset. So you'll do 6 adductor squeeze, 6 fire hydrants, 6 adductor squeezes, 6 fire hydrants, and that'll be the end of that superset. A word of caution, do not force these. If anything's painful, leave it out. These will not fix actual pathology. So, you know, if you're doing them and it hurts, that tells you that there's a dysfunction there already. So that's a signal that, hey, I should probably get my hips checked. There's nothing in here that's radical, that's, you know, going to injure your hips. If you're doing them and you're having pain, it tells you there's a pre-existing something going on, so I should really get that checked out. You can check out this video to see if maybe you have some early signs of femoroacetabular impingement, or FAI. And it's not the end of the world, and it's good to know if you have some of those early signs, because there are a lot of things we can do to improve the symptoms you might be having, or to increase your performance despite having that FAI and slow down the progression of that FAI. So now it's your turn. I want you to do it for at least 3 days, and then come back and drop a comment. Let me know how it feels different. Oh yeah, and don't forget to hit me with that like button, because the YouTube algorithm apparently eats likes for breakfast or something, and the more cookies you give it, the more it likes you. I'm not really sure how it all works, but I'm supposed to say that. Otherwise, I'll get you same bad time, same bad channel next week. Love you guys.